That's awesome. That's so fun. Oh, come on, Mike.
Welcome to the Complete Streets Commission's February 12th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. We'll begin with the roll call. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Sally Cole. Commissioners present include Brian Altman, Meredith Bergen Bailey, Athena Arakomos, Vice Chair Lisbeth King, Jackie Sebrian. City staff present include Katrine Maki, Senior Transportation Planner. Absent includes Matthew Raskoff, Commissioner Raskoff. Katrine, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair Cole and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the February 12th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, virtual attendees on Zoom may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium and make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrine. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Katrine, can you, do you have any reports and announcements?
I do. I just have an update. Last month, I said that the meeting in Belhaven would be in March. It will now be April that we'll have our meeting in Belhaven.
Okay.
And staff will be providing an update on the Willow Road bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So
great.
that's why it's in Belhaven. It's
Right. That's excellent.
That
All right.
concludes my reports and announcements.
Thank you. It's all going to try and get people coming to that meeting. All right. Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject that is not listed on tonight's agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Katrine, can you please call for general public comment?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. We have 3 in the queue. I will begin with Laura.
Hi, commissioners and team. This is Laura Milan. Thanks for your work on improving Middle Avenue, the bike lanes, and Blake Street closure.
Laura?
Yeah, hi.
I'm sorry. This section is general public comment. So it's for residents to comment on items that are not listed on tonight's agenda. If you're commenting on Middle Avenue, we will have a public comment section later in the meeting that relates to what's on the agenda for Middle Avenue. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Talk to you then.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
Next, we have Nancy.
Hi, everyone.
We can hear you, Nancy.
You can hear me. Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. 2 things. I am really excited about the possibility for bike lanes on El Camino Real that you all discussed in the January meeting. So just rooting you on and all of us on to have that happen. And the second thing is I live on Partridge Avenue, and it's a lot of the families, especially those with young children, are very concerned about how fast the traffic is flowing down our street. So I'm here just to add another, couple of plugs to identify some traffic calming measures that we could implement for our street. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
And Bill, you're up next.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you, commissioners, for your work. I was on the Bicycle Commission for 4 years, and then we folded into Complete Streets, served there for 4 years. So I really appreciate your work. I'm all for all of the bike lane improvements, pedestrian improvements. Keep pushing on that. As with Nancy, the prior speaker, I also live on Partridge Avenue. We're getting a very high volume of cut-through traffic, and we're having a very difficult time getting the city to do anything about it. And Katrine, I'm very happy to see you on board. We've been promised the Slow Streets program. It seems to be always being pushed out because of budget constraints, personnel. And what I would ask is this: there's so many quick build, simple things that can be done to address cut-through traffic, to slow people down. I'm going to make another comment during the Middle Avenue agenda item, but what I'd like you to do is push the city to consider doing some quick build things to give folks like that live on Partridge and other streets that are suffering cut-through traffic some relief. The city of Atherton, for example, has installed rubber speed humps, a temporary measure on, I believe, 6 residential streets that have the same problem that we do. They were willing to put those in at very low cost. They're doing it as a trial, and they can be easily removed. So please push city staff to get active, get out there, and instead of waiting for sort of a perfect slow street solution citywide, to start implementing some quick build, low cost measures that'll give our folks immediate help. Thank you.
Any other public comments, Katrine?
Having no one else in the queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. I'd like to add an amendment to the roll call, which was item B tonight, that Commissioner Raskoff is not absent, he is present. Thank you. All right, moving on to E, regular business. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is accepting the Complete Streets Commission meeting minutes from our December 11th meeting, as well as our January 8th meeting. You may remember in the January 8th meeting, we discussed that the minutes for the December 11th meeting included a summary of the motion that I thought wasn't quite accurately stated. So I sent some language. I just edited the language. Here it is, that Katrine and I went back and forth with. So here it is. So in order to, I'm raising this because the commission's being asked to improve the minutes for both December 11th and 8th meetings. And I just wanted to provide what I would suggest as the edits for the motion in the December 11th meeting. I'd also like to clarify why I do spend, as chair, I do spend time on making sure that motions are accurately stated in the minutes. One of the first experiences about a year into working on the commission that I had was the biggest, sort of most publicly attended meeting about a year into my tenure was about Middle Avenue. And unfortunately in the minutes, it actually stated the motion slightly inaccurately. And it was difficult that fall to see people get up and say, well, the commission said this about Middle Avenue, and City Council, you're going beyond what they said. And that wasn't actually true. So I do think it's important to get the minutes accurately because people do go back to see what we've recommended. So this is my proposed correction. As I discussed in the last meeting, it was because, and I went back and I listened to the discussion in the December 11th meeting. This was a motion by Matthew Raskoff and Athena Arakomos. And when Commissioner King made a friendly amendment and Kevin restated it back, he said language, all right, so the friendly amendment is to add a new alternative to B. So I tried to reflect as best possible and be as clear as possible that we're asking for further study and evaluation of both of these alternatives. I also put in some further clarification that we had discussed that both alternatives wanted to include both Commissioner King and then Matthew and Athena wanted to include the exploration of intersection corner improvements. So with that, if we have a motion on the table to approve the December 11th and January 8th meetings, that would be great. If we have a proposal to change this language slightly, of course, welcome any input. I leave it. Oh, sorry. Should I, let me just do this. So do we have any clarification from the commission about the minutes, including this proposed edit, before we take public comment? Let's do it that way. Do you have any clarification from the commission on the minutes or on this proposed correction? Okay. Katrine, can you call for public comment on the minutes that were included in the agenda? And public comment is welcome on the proposed correction.
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. I'm looking to see if I see no raised hands in the queue for public comment. I return the meeting to the chair.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of December 11th with this proposed correction and the minutes of January 8th?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Thank you. Katrine, do you want to take a show of hands?
Yes. I'm just taking notes as well.
Oh, pardon me.
No worries.
Pardon me.
Can I see a show of hands for the to accept the minutes as with the proposed correction for December 11th and the minutes as provided for January 8th? Everyone accepts
Yes.
and the motion passes.
Thank you. All right, then we will move on to the second business item tonight, which is E2. Receive an update on the Middle Avenue traffic calming implementation. Thank you, Katrine, our senior transportation planner, for presenting this item tonight.
There we go. Tonight, I will be providing an update and answering questions. I just want to begin by just reminding the commission and the public that we're not asking the commission to take any action on this item tonight. I'm here to provide updates and answer questions. I'm going to be providing a background of the project, describing the traffic calming elements that we'll be talking about, reviewing the design, and reviewing next steps. To provide some background on the Middle Avenue Complete Streets project, in March of 2021, this is when council directed staff to add the Middle Avenue traffic calming project as a Complete Streets project. Then in October of 2022, traffic calming measures were approved. And then in May of 2024 is when the permanent bike lanes, permanent buffered bike lanes were approved. So currently today, we're going to be talking about a resurfacing project that's going to include the traffic calming. There are a lot of elements and projects around the Middle Avenue. So I just want to distinguish the difference between what we're talking about tonight versus other topics that are related to Middle. So what will come back to you and what comes up in the future are these other projects listed here. We will be looking at intersections improvements at Santa Cruz and Olive. We're still working on the Middle Caltrain undercrossing. Just relative to the minutes we just approved, we are still studying and working on a design for the Middle and El Camino Real intersection improvements. And we still need to come back to you with a report on the evaluation of the pilot projects. So a recap, again, this is a little bit of just a history of how we got to where we are today. In October of 2022, the Complete Streets Commission accepted the staff recommendations for the placements of specific elements of traffic calming. Then from 2023 to 2024, the focus shifted away from the traffic calming and was really focused on the bikeway design work. And this was the discussion about removing parking, buffered bikeway, and that kind of thing. Once that was that final design was adopted, we were done with the pilot and we approved that final design. This past year has been working on the final design of those traffic calming elements. So we kind of coming back to where we began. We're talking about the traffic calming, and there was a middle step in there with the bikeway design work. So this is the part where I'm just going to explain what I know about traffic calming and make sure everyone is understanding these pieces that I'm going to be showing you on a map of where they'll occur on the corridor. They include raised crosswalks, speed humps, flashing beacons. The RRFB stands for Rapid Rectangular Flashing Beacon, I believe, stop signs, and bulb outs. So the raised crosswalk and the flashing beacons, you've probably seen the flashing beacons near the Caltrain tracks when you're crossing, is it Ringwood? Yeah, just right here. And so that's something where a pedestrian pushes a button and the lights under the person here light up in an amber color to notify it really helps with visibility for a pedestrian trying to cross the street. The raised crosswalk similarly elevates the pedestrian. So it's kind of like a speed bump. It's a table. Technically it's called a speed table, but it raises that intersection and creates a traffic calming element to slow vehicles as they drive over it. But it also brings the pedestrian more visible in the intersection. And in the design on Middle, we've paired these. So you'll see them together. They don't always get paired throughout the city, but in this situation, they're together. We have a speed feedback sign to just increase awareness, make it very clear. This is the speed limit and this is what you're driving. The high visibility crosswalk is the difference between the lines being at a different angle than your two white lines. You know, if you picture crossing El Camino Real, I think is a good example where there's just a left line and a right line that go across the street. That's a standard crosswalk. So a high visibility crosswalk is where you get these thick white bars. They're a little bit easier to see when you're further away. So that's why we call it a high visibility crosswalk. You're more likely to see these in areas where we've determined that pedestrian visibility is important. Sometimes you'll see them yellow if it's near a school. And the bulb out is a feature that's used to bring the pedestrian kind of out from behind a parked car, I think is the best way to think of it. It also shortens your crossing distance. And I'm going to come back to that. That's really important with respect to Middle because we originally proposed bulb outs. And the situation has changed, and it has a lot to do with what you see on this image here. If you picture yourself as a pedestrian and picture a parked car there, the purpose of the bulb out is to increase that visibility of the crossing pedestrian from a parking lane. And finally, we have a speed hump. There are several of these on Willow Road. It isn't a good example if you're closer to downtown after you cross Middlefield. There's a lot in the Willows as well. This design has a channel in the middle to allow a fire truck to pass through. That's what the two kind of depressions, a little bit hard to see in the middle there. So now I'm coming to the changes in recommendations, and I've completely not paid attention to my notes, so give me a second to catch up. There we go. So I think it's really important to start off by making the note that these changes do not alter the project in a manner that changes the intent to calm traffic. The changes to remove the bulb out and curb extensions were no longer applicable when we removed parking to put in the bike lanes. The other items listed haven't changed. The change that I'm going to talk about is just a slight location change. Now, these changes were made because of site limitations due to the grading. So that's the slopes and making sure things are accessible by a wheelchair or ADA compliant, and drainage. So when this image without the blue arrows was brought before you, this was a conceptual design. We took this conceptual design to our engineering team to create engineering drawings for implementation. And they came back to us and said, we need to make some adjustments because this cannot go in exactly how you've shown it. So I'm going to show you where the adjustments are. But it wasn't, these features were moved because of engineering site limitations. And again, I don't believe that they were changed in a manner that changes their function and the need to provide traffic calming and speed reduction. So in this graphic, there are no changes. This is the same as what was shown here.
Sorry, can we just take a quick pause?
Mhm.
So the slide you jumped to. So Katrina, sorry, can you go one slide forward where you just said,
Mhm.
okay, no change. So it looks like you're going to be talking to like segments of middle. And I just want
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, right. And so I
Mhm.
just want to make sure that everyone's in the mindset of like, okay, this is the Olive to San Mateo Drive.
Thank you.
segment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, we're starting kind of on one end and we'll work our way up to El Camino Real. So just to make it readable in the graphic. And just so that it's clear, so there is a bit of a bulb out that you'll see on Olive. There's a better graphic of it that Kevin brought up a couple meetings ago that I don't have, but we have our raised crosswalk at Cotton with the rapid rectangular flashing beacons and it's speed hump close to Santa Rita Way.
And of course, at the original city council meeting, they approved like the immediate installation of a full stop, four-way stop on San Mateo. So that's what you're seeing on the top left there.
That
So
is there.
That didn't
That-
exist, but
Yeah, and that
it
will
was
not be
installed.
going away.
right.
So what we have is the change is that the raised crosswalk was supposed to be on where we now just have a high visibility crosswalk. It needed to be moved closer to the church and closer to the other segment of Arbor Road, so in front of the church. And that again was drainage and grading requirements, but there's still protected crossings at both segments of that intersection, or not protected, but safety improved. You know, we have the high visibility crossing and we have the elevated crossing.
So the change was in the placement, the movement and the location.
Yes, if you can
Okay.
see my cursor, yeah. So the original graphic had it here and it's going to be here. But we did not remove this intersection.
And so just also to clarify, was there no crossing, even a drawing, high visibility or any crosswalk there where it is going to be placed?
There is not one current, let me look.
think there
So
might
yeah,
be.
is this what we're,
I think there
Oop.
is. Well, if there's one right by, I think there's one by the church and there's one right by the Arbor corner. I think
Ah.
There's a crosswalk by the church. But I'm not, that one I don't know. I'm just trying to make sure we,
yeah, I wish I
Okay.
could toggle between this one. So here's There was not a high visibility crosswalk marked there
okay.
before.
All right, thank you.
Okay, this is where we were, going one more segment down. So now we're at from University to El Camino Real.
Can you go back one? Is there something there though on Yale that,
Yes, so that's a raised crosswalk and flashing beacon in front of Yale. It's not changing from what the original design was.
I don't think there was one at Yale in the original design. Jackie or Liz or Brian?
feel like there is a crosswalk.
But it's an intended to be a raised with a flashing beacon. I don't think there was presented to the council. There wasn't that in October 2022.
Here, let me help. I see it in my
Yep.
notes here. There is an existing, there was a speed table there. In the plan, this was, yeah, not in real life. I'm just reviewing my notes here. No, sorry, I should have noted that in the original graphic. This is another new piece.
Okay, so this had been a regular high visibility crosswalk. My recollection, but please correct me if I'm not right about this, is that we didn't have in the original traffic calming measures presented to council the idea of flashing beacons or raised crosswalk, but I know that we did hear from residents that there was more crossing there because people in the apartment buildings were crossing over to park on Yale. And so we said we would look into whether a crosswalk was a more highlighted crosswalk was needed.
Thank you for that. That must
Sure.
be a knowledge gap between Kevin and me that
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
filling.
no problem at all. But I think that's what Jackie and Liz remember that. Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right. University has an all-way stop and that will remain. Blake Street, there currently is the flashing beacons and a high visibility crosswalk. In the plan, there was a plan for a raised crosswalk there. And this was grading, so that it had to do with the slopes of the street and the slope of the sidewalk couldn't be ADA compliant if we raised that crosswalk. I went out to the site personally, and I felt like it was extremely important to retain some sort of traffic calming at this entrance, basically to the corridor. And it is in the, as recommended there, we had a raised crosswalk that was accepted by commission. So the best this is the engineering judgment of what we can do is add that speed hump before the crosswalk. And therefore we're still creating, there's still a high visibility crossing in the sense that the flashing beacons will be on, and there's still a speed deflection with the speed hump. It's just not all in one as it is in the other places because we couldn't fit it to this one spot. It's the best way to describe it.
But that's a speed hump for westbound only, right?
It'll be both directions.
But
You're right. The
what-
importance to slow down the speed is
for the crosswalk, right?
Right, right.
So is there a way?
But
to
we can't do it on one side of the road. Yeah. So then next steps that are specific to this project is that the design will be posted and advertised by the city, and will award the contract to do the resurfacing and the traffic calming implementation this spring. Just for your knowledge, this work will be partially funded through a TA grant, which is a transportation alternatives grant, for $1.2 million. And then the construction is estimated to last 70 working days, and will happen this summer. And everyone's goal is for the project to be substantially complete before school begins on August 20th. Other next steps that are not real, not this project, but I want to acknowledge them because it's come up a lot and I know the community finds it very important. The Olive and Santa Cruz intersection design is expected to the design work is expected to start in the summer. We're not exactly sure when the construction itself will happen. That will depend on the grant funding. We will be gathering community feedback on the pilot projects for the Blake Street closure and the back and angle parking in front of Nealon Park. And we are continuing to work on the middle Caltrain undercrossing and the middle and the El Camino Real intersection improvements. And there, we do also have it on our to-do list to restart the neighborhood traffic management program, which is also known and renamed as the Slow Streets. That's staffing dependent, and the exact restart date is still to be determined. Thank you.
All
That
right.
concludes
Thank
my
you,
presentation.
Katrine. Thank you. So do we have any clarifying questions from the commissioners before I take public comment? Commissioner Bain.
I do, and I think this is maybe what Commissioner Altman was getting at with the speed hump by Blake Street. I think, is it possible to have a speed table or a speed hump on each side of the pedestrian crosswalk? Recognizing that you do want the cars to slow down before they get to the pedestrian crosswalk, but currently that would only in effect be happening one way.
On the crosswalk.
Also that, yes.
Yeah, it was intended to be on the cross, right? So true, it wasn't going to be, had it been put in the way we were intending it to, that wouldn't have happened anyways.
Is it a financial thing? Is it an engineering thing?
It's an engineering thing. Yeah.
But so as it is now, the cars would actually slow on the crosswalk going eastbound.
There will be a sign before the crosswalk that they should slow for
What
the
I'm
speed
saying
hump.
is the car will be in to hit, when they hit the bump, the car will have slowed in the crosswalk going east. Correct?
They'll be traveling slower in the crosswalk, yeah.
Well, hopefully slower.
Yeah.
Right? But they'll be in the crosswalk.
Commissioner Alman, can you clarify the question? Are you, is what the point of, are you saying that you think it should be in different location?
Yeah, back to the other comment. So westbound, it makes sense. Cars slow up before the crosswalk, right? Going eastbound, they'll slow up, but when they slow up, they'll actually be in the crosswalk, correct?
I can't say exactly when they're gonna start slowing. There will be signs indicating when they'll to slow prior to the crosswalk.
Okay, just.
And there's also going to be a yield to pedestrian sign and yield markings before the crosswalk.
Yeah, but they'll, to do the hump, they'll be in the crosswalk.
Correct.
There's no way to separate it, right? So there's one westbound and then on the other side, eastbound.
My reaction to that would be is I think you always go the width of the roadway, but you don't want a motorist to drive around it.
There's
Okay.
just a lot of traffic, a lot of kids walking across that.
So a half a bump never exists.
Because then you get people just driving right around it.
Any other clarifying?
Related to this crosswalk and speed bump combination, will the high visibility of the crosswalk be impacted at all by the presence, like offset presence of the speed hump? Like, since it's, I don't know how tall they are, but could that impede your like line of sight to those lines at all?
The hump, the speed hump won't be tall enough. Kind of, I could go back to that image where I had the image of the speed hump, but it's not enough to impact the visibility.
I also have one more
Go ahead.
question, but if, my question is about the speed feedback signs. Are they there? I see them on this segment. Are they also on the previous segment?
There's one in front by Jack Lyle Park there.
I see. Is there,
And there's
like,
one there.
is there like documented effectiveness for these so close together?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I honestly don't know. I don't think it hurts.
Okay, well, we can get back to you on that, Commissioner Comas. I had a clarifying question. Sorry, let's just go back to the overhead map for a moment.
For some reason, I can't skip around, but I will go back manually.
All right. Okay, let's see. Oh,
There we go.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. I think that's a good question, Commissioner Comas. I think that would be really helpful to know. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to see what, because I was looking at some other map when I had my clarifying question.
I also
I know what you mean.
having more minutes to think about the speed feedback sign. There is documented evidence that they make motorists aware of the speed. It's just that I can't tell you at what speed reduction. Like it wouldn't. It's part of the Vision Zero traffic calming menu of things that we can use. I just can't give you the number off the top of my head of how effective it is.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not denying that they're like a sign would be effective. I'm asking.
So many.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many.
I
And they're
guess-
like one block apart. And you know, I was just wondering, is that like a
Well, and this-
enforcement strategy, or is it just like?
It looks to me like the placement is whether you're going east, you're told your speed before you hit Nealon and before you hit, excuse me, west before you hit Jack Lyle, and then going east, you're told before you hit Jack Lyle, before you hit Nealon. Those two major crossings where assumably, you know, people are crossing back and forward. Yeah, kids to the park, to parks. Because there aren't any over between like San Mateo and Olive. So I guess it was to control speed around the parks, I'm assuming is the, I mean, I do remember when we first started looking at middle, of course, back in 2021 is noted, there was a lot of feedback from residents around speed. Just so much feedback around slowing down the traffic. So I'm assuming that staff's original intent was especially at these parks. I remembered my clarifying question. Is it possible to forward to the slide where we're looking at the Blake Street crossing for a moment and where the speed humps were located? Yeah. Oh, that's it. Okay, sorry. So my question I had when I looked at the placement of the speed humps was right above, so north of that speed hump, is that indent? Is that piece one of the places that people can park at Nealon?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And that is another reason I went out to look at it myself on site, because I really wanted to locate this speed hump, not where someone would be backing in, but there was a driveway further down. There was a drainage grate. Again, it's engineering limitations of the best location that could be found on that corridor.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess people backing in, if the pilot and the feedback we get, et cetera, lead us and the city council to approve back in parking at Nealon Park, seems a little awkward to be backing in with the speed
And it
bump.
will be tapered. This isn't,
Okay.
it tapers down to meet the gutter where the water would be on the side of the road.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a big hump at that point where the vehicle will be kind of in that bike lane in the buffer area as they're turning into that back end angle parking.
Okay.
It's much steeper when you're in the travel lane.
Okay. And the only other clarifying, I guess, question or comment, et cetera, that I wanted to make was if you go to this segment from Olive to San Mateo, that segment, we talked about Olive there. So the things that, so I just wanted to say that we did as a commission between the time the city council passed, approved the pilot of bike lanes and these traffic calming measures from that point until today, our commission did look at the Olive intersection. And there
Yes.
were two.
And that is being incorporated as adopted.
Great.
No
great.
changes there.
Yeah.
I just couldn't draw it in my little art.
No, no worries.
picture.
But I think that, so we looked at it and chose an alternative that we favored for where the bike lane location would be. And it between the people, I'm sorry, for to prevent the people from turning right to go into the bike lane. So we worked on that previously. Okay.
Yes, and if you wanted to revisit that, that's on the Middle Complete Streets website. It's all been captured
Yes.
in the minutes, the agendas, that kind of thing. And that was also discussed at council and adopted by council after commission made a recommendation.
Oh, great. Okay. So it sounds like Katrine has gone through all the ways in which the recommendations were tweaked for different reasons. And we've had clarifying questions. If no one else has.
I had one.
Of course, sorry, I didn't see you.
Which is about enforcement. So that's been a real issue on this corridor. I've called the police probably 2 or 3 dozen times. They respond very quickly, but it's only reflex. It's not proactive. And I remember there was discussion about bollards and having a physical protection to keep traffic out of these bike lanes. And in certain segments, obviously that's difficult because there are so many driveways. But not in all of the sections. There are many sections where there are no driveways, where there could be more physical barriers. And you were talking about the cut through, around, traffic trying to go around. An alternative might be to have more bollards that would prevent that from happening as well. By all means, still have good speed bumps, but going over a speed bump on a bicycle is quite difficult and quite unpleasant. If you had a bollard protection, you could imagine having some mechanism to keep cars out of it. I don't know if that's fully possible. I know some speed bumps have narrow breaks within them also. I think the ones on College and Partridge have those too. So you can kind of bike in between it too. I was just wondering, I think to me, this feels like a coordination challenge between the transportation team and the police department. And maybe we need to have the chief come to the commission to discuss this, because it doesn't work effectively if we build great infrastructure and there's no enforcement. And it doesn't work if there's a lot of enforcement, but the infrastructure is encouraging people to do the wrong thing. The way we'll get progress is through a tandem combination of enforcement and infrastructure working together. I realize that's very hard in a bureaucracy, but that to me feels like the really important thing. And when I see cars just parked in the bike lane, it's so grating, having worked on this project for 3 years. And that's why I call the police every time. And I wonder if there are things that we could do to make sure the infrastructure is as enforceable as possible, as transparent as possible. I know the signage is greatly improved. Every 10 feet you go, it says no standing, no stopping zone, and still people do it, including FedEx, UPS, and Amazon drivers as well. So that it's, I'm sorry, it's somewhat long-winded, but I guess the question is, what's the mechanism by which we will make sure that the spirit of Complete Streets here is actually carried out once we spend $1.2 million on this project, to make sure it's actually implemented effectively?
I can tell you, we do have monthly transportation department and police department coordination meetings. In fact, we have them the same day we have this meeting. So I had one today. So the communication is happening. And as the project is implemented, police department will know. And I think it's great that you're calling them. I think that's important. I think I'll let the police department speak for themselves. It's a staffing, I think as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just a clarifying question of Commissioner Raskoff's comment. So my clarifying question to you is, when you were saying enforcement, I thought you were going to say enforcement of speed, but you meant enforcement of people parking the bike lane?
I guess both. Yes, and
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I see on a daily basis is people parking or stopping in the bike lane.
In the bike lane.
The speed, I feel like the speed limit's been dropped. The idea of enforcing speeding in Menlo Park is such a dream to me. It may be
Yeah.
impossible to even conceive of the idea of somebody getting a speeding ticket in this section. That would be wonderful if that were possible, but it's almost inconceivable to me. But parking in this lane just to me feels like it's endangering people's lives. And it's violating the spirit of the protection that we've created here with great effort. And That to me, and it doesn't require a squad car. It can be done by a community officer as well. So it's much, more accessible for the police department to actually enforce parking than speeding, for example.
Yes, Commissioner.
Just kind of piggybacking off of what Commissioner Raskoff said, and not to derail us, but we've talked a little bit about the Slow Streets program burgeoning. And I have heard from our police department about staffing issues, but I do wonder if there would be a way to specifically fold in some type of enforcement, specifically in the Slow Streets areas, especially those attached to school routes. Just a thought.
So, did you, sorry, Commissioner Seabrand.
I had a clarifying question to talk about. Sorry. It's okay if I just ask a quick one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so as we've been talking about the speed thing, which I'm super, I have two things. One, on the speed feedback signs, do we know, is there a particular reason, like, I get the speed feedback signs that give you the number, but frankly, as a driver, I wonder if maybe even every other one, like if you're over the speed limit, I've seen the ones that just say slow down, right? And to me, the dual advantages of that are that the young people in the car can read that, right? And it creates in that particular corridor, having actually had my own kid in like second grade tell me I was going too fast because the speed limit sign said, and my speed limit sign said something different. So I know the power of that. And so I feel like if you just flash the number, it just serves to validate whether your speedometer works. Like, because I don't find, we have them on Ringwood, they're not working. Like nobody slows down because it says they're going too fast that I've seen. So that's one thing. I wonder if we could use the slow down thing because it's sort of a call to action and not just a flashing number. And then the second thing is to Commissioner Raskoff's point about the bollards. I see a lot of cars ride the line on that bike lane. Like their tires are in the buffer lane and they just drive down middle like that. And I have a really good rear view mirror, so now I can see it all the time. And so I think that some measure of protective bollards would kind of help drivers understand their lane and our lane. And I just think for the safety of bikers, because and also cyclists are often like, because they're little kids, right? And so I do find that they are all over that bike lane, and sometimes it makes me a little nervous. They get a little close to the line, but I think those things would also serve as helpful barriers because there are some stretches where there aren't driveways, and maybe that would help. And the very last thing, the bulb out at the end of Olive Street, is that just going to be paint? Because it looks like it's kind of where the bikes are going to be going onto Olive. And so I'm hoping that we just mean it to be paint.
I didn't draw it to scale.
Okay.
I believe they will be paint, and the technical term is escaping me, but the candlesticks where they're the bollards that of the white.
Okay.
Yeah.
So bikes will be able to like get through that. And then there used to be bollards at the very end of middle, right? Where the bike lane is, there's those bollards to separate the bike lane from what used to be a right turn lane. But the last like 3 of them have disappeared. And so I don't know if somebody took them out so that cars could turn faster, or if they just got run over repeatedly because cars turn faster, but I feel like they should be back. But anyway, that's all. I love all the update and all of the other feedback slowdown things.
Yes, Commissioner Almond.
What's the strategy to understand and perhaps address cut-through traffic that this may cause?
That is a good question. That will need to be strategized. when there wasn't one created as part of this project when this was adopted with council.
Yeah, my concern is from, Vision Zero, slow streets. They all, take a look at the,
I think it needs to
cut-through
be,
traffic is,
yeah, it would need to be, and it's, as Kevin mentioned before, a comprehensive study that looks at not just one street. And it looks at the entire area and it models that, but that would have to be a project in and of itself, directed from council to staff to take on.
but do you have any insights or what do you think the impact might be?
I don't, sorry.
I think that my recollection at the time of the conversations were that this was a high crash corridor, that it had numerous collisions, and that we really needed to slow it down. I remember during the public comment period, people were concerned, for example, if we put a stop sign at San Mateo, that people would then turn on San Mateo toward Santa Cruz Avenue. And that would change traffic behavior. And I remember someone telling me, maybe it was Kevin, that they didn't see that happening. So there was some discussion of cut through and side traffic. And I think the priority at the time was to make sure that this corridor was, I remember the words of, I have them because I was listening to Hugh Louch today, safe and comfortable for pedestrians and bicyclists, improve the safety, reduce the speed. I hope that's helpful. That's just what I remember him saying.
It's something that would take a relatively complex model to look at, because you have to know your origins and your destinations and then have an algorithm that kind of tries to predict travel behavior based on congestion, speed, additional speed humps. It's a relatively complex thing to create a quantifiable prediction. That's why I'm not giving you
Yeah.
It's not an easy one to tackle with a computer model. We can, I think someone familiar with the area, a resident is going to have ideas that.
Well, I live on College.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I thought
tell
you probably know better than I do, but it's something that would have been considered and collected as the public input for this project when it was part of the public workshops in 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2022. I had some comments on the comments from Commissioner Raskoff and Commissioner Seabrian around enforcement, but I'm thinking I might give them in the feedback section. I'm not sure. They seem like more my own feedback around how to help that out. I'm not sure, but I guess I'll just do that then. Okay, so let's move to public comment unless anyone else has a clarifying question. Okay, Katrine, can you call for public comments on this item?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. I'm going to stop my screen sharing so I can see. Yes, there's a form in the back. Do you see it there? Do you have? Yeah, there's a card to fill out. Okay, we have 3 in the online queue and 1 in person. We'll start with Laura. And I believe you're unmuted, Laura. Can we hear you?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hey, everyone, this is Laura Milan again. Thanks for your work on this. I do want to reiterate the bike lanes and the Blake Street closure have already made a huge positive difference in the neighborhood. A few quick ideas just based on the conversation before I get to my main topic. An idea for Arbor and Middle, where the engineering work required the move, is the flashing lights might be better leading to Jack Lyle Park. So put the flashing lights with the high vis, even though the raised crosswalk can't go there. Because I know that crosswalk gets used way, way more. Second, on the Blake Street one, at Nealon Park, the speed hump and crosswalk combo doesn't seem great. I appreciate that there are engineering challenges. But I just wonder if we're eventually going to make the Blake closure permanent, if the grade challenges would have potentially another solution. If you're gonna partially close off that street, that could just make the entire thing better as a raised crosswalk instead. And then third one on Yale. So Yale didn't have any crosswalk at all before. A raised one there is so close to the university stop sign that I wonder if just a high visibility crosswalk would be fine there. And this leads into my main point, which is doing all of these kind of speed hump and speed tables, where each one encourages drivers to cut through more. It kind of feels like overkill. And I know in the original plan that we looked at in 2022, I think there were 4 bumps of various types, and now it's up to 5. And I think as we are doing these improvements in 2025, as a resident of Allied Arts, which is adjacent, I'm hoping to encourage the commission to advocate for this opportunity to try some traffic calming interventions. I understand we're not going to have a good quant prediction of traffic behavior, but I think we have a lot of on the ground observations and kind of common sense, where the primary goal of the Middle Ave project is traffic calming, and it's well documented by the Federal Highway Administration, by the Department of Transportation, that traffic calming pushes drivers onto parallel streets. So to ensure the long-term success of the Middle Ave improvements, I would love to see us take a proactive network-wide approach, as you mentioned, Katrine, that considers the impact on the adjoining streets like College and Partridge and Arbor, where drivers are choosing to leave Middle and zip down those streets to get to El Camino faster. So I'd propose pairing the summer improvements with low-cost experiments on those Allied Arts streets. And thank you so much for your time and consideration and work on this.
Thank you, Laura. Next, we have.
Sorry,
Sorry.
do we see the clock?
I didn't start one.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, it was super distracting. And last time I forgot to turn it off.
Do you want me to do it? I can do it from here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next we have Bill.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, this, I love this plan, Middle Avenue plan, and I know there'll be tweaks and so on. But in general, I think this is a great plan. This has been a very dangerous corridor. I love the bike lanes, and if we can ever get that undercrossing, it'll be fantastic. The one thing that's really missing here, and Katrine, he sort of reinforced that when he talked about, a comprehensive slow streets plan, but that involves algorithms. Honestly, I think a lot of that, it just needs common sense, and it just needs staff to come out and just observe the parallel streets in Allied Arts that are already being affected by cut-through traffic, and just start with quick build, simple trials like Atherton is doing with their speed humps. Any kind of intervention that would be simple and a trial. Anything that involves a comprehensive plan to me is like a 30-year plan, and I don't feel like it's going to get done in my lifetime. And I really think it just involves having staff come out, just observe for 1 hour the traffic that is already now cutting through College, cutting through Partridge all day long. If you just observe and then come up with simple trials and save the comprehensive plan for the future, because you're never going to come up with a perfect plan. So let's trial some things, some low cost, inexpensive things to pair with this Middle Avenue, or to follow on after the Middle Avenue improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we have Paul.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for all the hard work here. This is really exciting to see. I haven't joined one of these meetings since the first one in 2022. So good to see where everything's going. And want to also thank both Laura and Bill. Totally agree with all of their comments. I live on Arbor by Middle. And just a couple things here about the crosswalk. Just like Laura said, as you know, there's two crosswalks, one by the church on Middle and one that goes to Lyle. I can tell you from experience that 99% of the pedestrian traffic is on the one that goes to Lyle. That's because that's the crosswalk that enters the neighborhood. So you can go into Allied Arts that way. And, I always constantly outside of Arbor see like people with Trader Joe's bags going over to the bike bridge to cross over to Stanford West. They all go down Arbor and turn down Bay Laurel and then go to the bridge. The other crosswalk, the one by the church, it crosses Middle into, just a street with no sidewalk. And really no one uses that crosswalk. So, great to have one there and no problem making it raised. But definitely the work needs to be done on the Lyle crosswalk. And that's just the most dangerous crosswalk right now, in all of Middle. And we just see cars all the time there, just almost, mowing down people with their kids as they're crossing over to the park. So I would totally be supportive of, just as long as you can make that like a flashing beacon there, or a speed hump, whatever you can do for that specific crosswalk. And if you still want to make the one raised by the church, great, that would slow down traffic because what traffic does there too is they fly down Middle and then they turn on Arbor, as Laura and Bill were saying, and then they go down to College or Cambridge in that case. And, they run to those parallel streets and it's just common sense. You don't need to do a traffic study. It doesn't need to be complicated here, but really does need to do you need to think about that traffic as well. And some, simple, like Bill said, simple ways to slow down the traffic that's low cost would go a long ways. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be expensive. Another idea is just to have a stop sign on College and Arbor, so that when cars do turn on to Arbor, to do the cut through, at least they have to stop there because we just see it's a three-way, there should be a three-way stop there and there's no stop sign at all currently. But the side streets, have even more pedestrians and it's more dangerous than Middle. And we see all these cars flying through, these like DoorDash and Uber drivers, who are just cutting through there because they know that's quicker. And it's already happening now and it's only going to get worse. So totally agree that we need to do something, speed bumps, whatever we can do on Arbor, College, Cambridge and Partridge too, if they're cutting through from University. So it was really surprising to hear that the traffic, for the cut through traffic's not being addressed as part of it. It's like clearly part of the same project. So you can't just kind of do one thing and then hope for the best because it's very clear, like there's very clear paths where those traffic will go. So and for the crosswalk too, like you don't need to do a big study to know which of those two Arbor crosswalks are being used. Like I can tell you firsthand, it's 99% of the pedestrian traffic is on that one crosswalk. So whatever you can do there, that'd be totally helpful. And thanks again. I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Paul. And Michael, you can come forward to speak up at the podium. I need to unmute there we go.
Speaking to this mic here. Hello.
Yes.
My name is Mike Lambert. I've taken a look at your map and the planned raised crosswalks on Middle Avenue hits me as punishing the drivers that obey the posted speed limits. The driving experience in many streets in Menlo Park is becoming worse. For instance, that stretch of Willow Road between Middlefield and Alma. It's nothing like what it used to be, but I understand you wanted to slow traffic down. As for the 25 speed limit on Middle Avenue, all I can say is it's about time. This was one of the first of two recommendations made by the very first Safe Routes to School Committee. And that was over 40 years ago. And I was a member of that committee. As for traffic enforcement in the city, my own feeling has got to be one of the worst in California. I live on the corner of San Mateo Drive and Middle Avenue and been there since 1946. I witness every day non-compliance with stop signs at the intersection. Every morning before dawn, I see cars, some slow down, and there are only a few a few not only stop, but don't even slow down. That's in the very early morning. After dawn, I see them slow down, but rarely come to a complete stop. There is no police enforcement. Only on 2 occasions since we did this whole project have I seen police cars parked on San Mateo Drive watching for violations. I discussed with them the stop sign problem enforcement, and they said they only have 2 officers in the city that do traffic enforcement, which shocked me. And they start working after dawn, so they're not there earlier to watch what the traffic going on. And then there are the bicyclists, both electric and manual bicycles. A lot of them turning at that intersection due to the footbridge to Stanford. Since I rarely ever see them stop or even slow down. And the question that goes through my mind, we have stop signs. Do they apply to bicyclists? I assume that they do, but they never stop, with the exception of a couple that are crossing into San Mateo Drive on the north side. A few suggestions for a better Middle Avenue. My own feeling is forget about the raised crosswalks and speed bumps and install speed cameras. This is what San Francisco has done on some very busy streets. I think it would have a huge impact. It would slow traffic and people recognize they're going to get a ticket for speeding over the 25-mile-an-hour limit. Thank you for the time.
I have no one else in the queue for public comment, so I
All right.
return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. All right. Well, is there any further commission discussion or feedback? Maybe the best thing to do now would be to put up the map. So as we're giving feedback, we can look at all the recommendations and then the proposed changes, or at least the changes that the engineers recommended. Yes, Commissioner Sebrian.
Just in listening to the last speaker's comments, it just made me ponder. I too also recognize that bikes are having a challenging time stopping at the stop signs. And I do my little yard duty as I commute my way across town, reminding them that they stop at stop signs. Is it possible to paint, like, to put an actual like stop on the bike lane on Middle? Like put a
paint it.
stop on the paint? Because I actually think that like there are kids who will respond to that, and hopefully adults who will. I'm just curious if, like, there's a little tiny stop sign at the foot of the bike bridge that's clearly for bike bridges, but
The smaller size stop signs like that one are not enforceable by a police department. So it's best to stay within the standardized signage and striping that is enforceable by the police department. My suggestion is that the education at the schools, like the Safe Routes to Schools program, I think that's the greatest place to reach the children to have them learn.
yes, except that they're riding through those stop signs with their parents. So all of the education that we do is not going to help that. And so I guess part of my question is, first, there's already a standard stop sign there that's legally enforceable that they have to stop at. I'm just asking, can we put a thing on the street to issue guidance to those kids who actually might, like, to the people who might, again, it's just that moment to like, oh, I have a stop, even if it's just a line, like a limit line, like stop signs get. I feel like there's nothing there for our younger cyclists who don't have good coaching to help them know to stop. And I do feel like as part of the education component, I just wonder if that's a problem that just paint could be used for, but maybe not.
So I think what you're saying is paint. I don't think she was saying put a smaller stop sign.
Because there is that tiny little thing at the footbridge, it made me think that
I like that
we
idea.
could put something, but I'm not opposed to just like simple paint that says stop, like you would have on a bike trail. right? Like sometimes there are places where the bike trail has to stop because there's traffic and it'll just paint on them, you know, and doesn't mean that all the bikes stop. Bikes have a hard time, I guess, with that.
Mhm. Did you have any other feedback? that
Nope,
you wanted to-
that's
Okay. Any other
for now.
commissioners have any other feedback about, I know we had some clarifying questions, but yes, Commissioner Marsca.
To me, the neighborhood impact has been raised now by several community members.
Mhm.
And I see it myself on a daily basis. So I also live in Allied Arts. I ride to Oak Knoll School. And I would say the traffic on Bay Laurel has increased as cars are trying to avoid Middle, as traffic has slowed on Middle. I think Paul Sullivan pointed out, like cars zipping across Arbor up and down Cambridge. And to me, like some of the ideas that were proposed by Laura don't seem to have big cost implications. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's, we could slow the traffic on Middle and in tandem or soon afterwards, also do some of the modal filtering, road dieting, and slow streets interventions that are low cost, that are quick build on the adjacent streets. I would say College and Partridge are important, but they already have speed bumps on them. Cambridge does not have a speed bump on it as far as Partridge does not. College does not, but a College has at the corner with Blake, there is like a new bollard sign. I don't know exactly what to call it. Take a look at the adjacent streets to this without a major network study. Do interventions that are in the range of hundreds or thousands, not millions of dollars, and see if the community responds to it. And that could be, that to me is sufficient for a study. And clearly Laura Milan has put an enormous amount of research and effort into this. She's done this study for us effectively and gathered the feedback from the community. It to me, like this, enough community input has been gathered to do some of these common sense interventions that will slow the traffic, which is what we're trying to do, and reduce some of the negative impacts that the improvements that we're making on Middle will have. I don't think we should see these as alternatives. Let's just do all of them together. I think the resources are there, and it's not zero sum. I think we could do all of this and think of it as a community effort rather than one street at a time, which I thought that was a good point by Paul. So those are just some thoughts based on the community input.
I think that's exactly it. It's a combination. Also, I think Middle, College, Cambridge, and Partridge are unique in terms of the parallelness of those streets compared to Santa Cruz, where a lot of the streets are perpendicular. In this area, good part of Middle is actually paralleled by those 3 or 4 other streets. So it's somewhat of a unique situation, but I think there's a lot of community involvement that's offering up some kind of quick fix experiments that I definitely think is worth taking a look at along with Middle.
Does
Can
anyone
we-
have a feedback?
Can our recommendation, I mean, I guess we're just off, tonight's just update and feedback, and it's not going to city council after this, and it's not going. I just wonder, like, in our thoughts about it, can we convey, you know, if that's where we all are, that we would like strongly encourage trying to do something about the potential for cut through as we work through these other improvements, because I don't want to not do the improvements on Middle. I think we definitely need to do them, and I wouldn't not do them because we're not ready to do the follow-up study. But I do think, given all of the heads up that we've had about the potential for problems, that it would feel better if we can say, like, we definitely want to go through with all these improvements, and also look at what low cost, easy things, like if there are quick things that we can offer to help mitigate some of the possible cut through. That'd be great.
Katrine, given all the comments tonight, maybe you can comment on what is in the Public Works arsenal to address these in terms of resources? I mean, staffing, finances, is, any quick fix available to these amending streets?
I don't think I'm the one that gets to decide. So I can't really talk about it from a resourcing standpoint. We take our direction from council with that work plan. And in terms of arsenal, just where my brain immediately went when I first heard the first part of your question is, what tools do we have at our disposal for
Right.
traffic calming? I love the Vision Zero plan, has an amazing appendix that illustrates what types of traffic calming could be used. And it's not, there are other traffic calming out there that's not part of that, but that's a very good list and a good place to start of something that's already been approved and adopted by the city.
I have some feedback. I think that one of the reasons, there's a few reasons it sounds like, just mirroring what people have said, that there's feedback from folks living on College and Partridge that there's increasing number of cars trying to cut through. And I assume, as Paul said, they're speeding. There's also, though, by dint of the tweaks in the design, more slowing of traffic with these changes on Middle. So I think that, folks living on College and Partridge, I imagine from reading Laura's comments, et cetera, that they're looking at Middle and they're saying, wow, they're really slowing it down now. For example, they're adding like a speed bump over near Blake, and that wasn't there before. And then they're adding, it's not here on the slide we're looking at, but adding a flashing, you can hit flashing beacon at Yale, right? And that would also, be slowing down traffic. So I guess I came away with two questions. I'm looking at this partly from, okay, what do we have before? What do we have now? And then partly from some of the issues that have been raised about College and Partridge, which is, can we get a little more information from city staff around the further enhancements on Yale with regard to making that a flashing thing? Is that because we received a lot of data, was there any tracking there about crossings, or was just, I just feel a bit lost on how, I know we had some residents say that they were using Yale, people were crossing over there more, but I'm assuming that's maybe another indication that traffic would be slowed further on Middle. And again, we are considering the whole neighborhood and people not cutting through. The other thing about the speed hump on Blake, I don't really know if I think that will further slow people heading into the crosswalk if the crosswalk beacon lights are going. So, and I also wonder, because I remember we had a lot of feedback from the fire and police around emergency vehicles. And I know that speed bumps are controversial on sort of high corridors like this. Because of that, I would assume that we would have to, our city staff, maybe you already have done this, but, run by the police and fire and the emergency folks, the addition of more speed humps on Middle. So I guess what I'm saying is
they're the only addition, I mean, the Blake was already going to have a raised
Okay.
crosswalk.
Okay.
So it's just moved, is kind of, the raised element has been moved, but the crosswalk on Blake that will be the crossing with the beacons will be at grade, will be flat. So that's not a new one, to be clear.
What's not a new one?
But the raised element. So we're not adding another.
So like for example, a police or emergency vehicle would think of a raised crosswalk the same way they would think of a speed bump? Okay, and so we already, I guess, I don't know if in residents' minds, when they see raised crosswalk, they think of it as equal to a speed bump in terms of slowing traffic, but I guess that's, whoops.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go back to the graphic. So it is difficult to take a picture of these things, but there is chevron here indicating that the raising is beginning. It's in the shadow there. And there's also a chevron on the other side. This is in the traffic lane and this is on Willow if you want to
Okay.
experience it in real life. But yeah, that is a raised table, a speed table is the
Okay.
technical term.
Well, I guess for me, my feedback is going back to the map that sorry.
If I could go there quickly, I would. But
Yeah. It almost, to me, looking at this, knowing that, we're having issues we're trying to balance the community needs, and we knew that speed and reducing the speed was an enormous priority, and I think we addressed that well. But we also know that we know that traffic needs to be moving through Middle, et cetera. We want them to do it safely. It does feel between, again, you're not seeing Yale here, but if you assume there's a red line there with 2 flashing beacons, it seems like that's a lot on this segment of Middle to have 4 crosswalks with flashing beacons and also 2 speed bumps and a stop sign. That just seems like a lot of infrastructure. If all the other commissioners feel like, well, that's manageable, or that's what it needs to take to slow speed on Middle, I'm open to opinions. But I would like to know how the Yale piece came to be, more about a raised crosswalk and also flashing beacons. I will say, we have on the San Mateo crossing at Santa Cruz, we have flashing beacons without a raised crosswalk. I think we have the same thing at Lemon. And so maybe this is just fewer raised crosswalks. I'm not sure, but it seems like a lot of infrastructure just to have, because we've added a speed bump and we've added a raised crosswalk in addition to the other changes we had. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Am I off track, or I'm happy to, does it seem reasonable? Well, I'm saying this out of sensitivity really to the side streets callouts. I'm not saying this is fixing the side streets issue or what these residents are telling us, but I think part of this is if we make Middle, like you're stopping and starting like every other block, that I think that will increase the side street traffic. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I can leave it
Yeah.
at that. With the feedback. In relation to the residents on College and Partridge and everything, I think that, I think Jackie said this, but yes, it's really important to keep Middle on track because right now, as you described, Katrine, when Liz and I met with Katrine past couple weeks a few times, it seems like the timing is really tight to get this RFP out, ship it out, get responses, get construction going. And none of us want to miss summer 2025 when this was approved in October 22. So I think that's really important to keep it on track. At the same time, there are these concerns coming up. I think that what's interesting is that someone said, well, if there's simple things we can do, we can put speed bumps on College, but then I just heard someone say, well, there are speed bumps on Partridge, but we had a couple of neighbors giving, Nancy Headley and Bill Kirsch giving feedback right up the top saying they live on Partridge. So, but there's speed bumps there, but so that's not effective. Okay. I thought someone said there were speed bumps on Partridge. I don't know how that, okay. Either way, I mean, I think that, there were a number of issues raised, like could, there be speed bumps on these other roads? And also, I thought that Paul had a really good point about a stop sign at Arbor and College. So I guess I would suggest, I don't know, quote unquote, that we can sort of lump the 2 projects together, even though that sounds like a bureaucratic thing to say. But I think we can bring to the attention of the city council member from this district and sit down with them and raise these issues and then ask her to meet with, maybe Justin Murphy or the city manager and ask if there is a separate path that we can engage the city on to test a few things in the meantime or, in short order. At a minimum, I really want to make sure that we are, when we install this type of stuff on Middle over the summer, that we are measuring the data on the other streets. I feel like we have a few residents telling us this. I don't know how many people on that street, have this opinion or really are anxious about this or observing what the 3 people who spoke tonight are observing. But I don't feel like we have enough data. I don't mean we have to have data to make a decision, but I don't know if the city is tracking this. So on just some basic level, if we're going to do all these improvements on Middle, I think we should have mechanisms in place to track what's happening on the other roads. And I know that when Hugh was presenting this originally to City Council, he said they'd be tracking, like the side street data, things like San Mateo, et cetera. And then Kevin mentioned that that wasn't happening. So I know there was some tracking taking place.
Their counts on Middle and Olive, because I was just reviewing the counts, and they're measuring if someone's going which direction on Olive. So there's counts on either side of Olive after Middle. I didn't see counts on the other side streets.
Middle and Olive. Okay. The city has an ability to do counts. Yeah. So I guess my suggestion, I'd like to, Jackie Cibrian said around strongly encourage, we strongly encourage the city and it could be, to do this in conjunction with Middle or that's the consensus of how I want to say this, or it could be to kind of try to fast track a quick conversation around what else can be done for the side streets. I'm not sure how everyone here wants to phrase that, but I think we're eager for some way to address this because we are putting in these traffic calming measures in Middle and it will make traffic slower there. I do want to say as well, can we get a little more information about the crosswalk on Arbor? Because I have the same experience as Paul. I live around the corner from here and I'm constantly at that Arbor and Middle intersection. And truly, I do agree with him that 99% of the people are crossing there, not at the church, but right there where that red line is. So what was the challenge for us? Because it's difficult when you see human behavior be so strongly one thing and then want to move it over. You know what I mean? It's just like that's
You can't change where people have their established paths and there's a reason they're crossing there. I agree. I don't have the deep history of all the iterations of, when that change happened or why. There's not not that depth of history of background when that happened. I can get back to you if I do find an answer.
I mean, I think I'd be curious to know if it was an issue of cost, like if it was doable.
It wasn't cost. It was an engineering decision. It was done by the consultants that were hired to create the engineering plans, a back and forth between them and Kevin of what will fit. And so it's water, it's being ADA compliant, making sure there's a curb ramp on either side of the intersection. And then in how the level, not making sure it's not too steep for a wheelchair. Those are typically the reasons that something will or will not fit. I don't know exactly which one of those applied at Arbor.
So that's interesting. So it sounds to me like the engineers said, we can't do a raised intersection there.
Exactly.
But what if it weren't raised? What if we kept the intersection there, but we didn't raise it? We just kept flashing beacons? Because I do think flashing beacons on their own really do affect a change in behavior rather than just a highlighted crosswalk. I mean, if that's the case, if it has to do with if it being raised or not, I would just move the flashing beacons over to the right crosswalk at Arbor and not raise it. I think that would be, in my opinion, that would be supportive of people's walking patterns and would still make it more safe.
Because you could still have the other raised crosswalk if you wanted to, the one by the church. Can that still like as a slowing down thing, right? But put the flashing beacons with the not raised crosswalk.
I'll look into it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other feedback from the commission? I'm going to quickly look over.
I have
Yes,
one,
please
I
go
guess
ahead.
it's sort of a question brought up by Chair Cole's comments earlier about counts on the side streets. Can we also get speed data? Is that possible? Like, is that tracked at all? Because volume of traffic is one concern and the speed of the traffic is another concern. And I feel like they're related perhaps in an inverse way, but.
When counts are done, sometimes speed data is collected, sometimes it's not. So it's an ability that is possible.
I guess I did have one more thing. So in the conversation with Commissioner Raskoff and Commissioner Seabreen about enforcement, I'm going to cross my fingers and assume that all these traffic calming measures will be effective in slowing the speed. And so I do agree that we should be doing before and after speed studies so that we can see that that's the case. I hope that we'll feel differently this fall about the need for speed enforcement on the road. I really do agree about parking in the bike lanes. And if as part of what we're doing in the summer, there's no change to the way the bike lanes are currently designed, and I believe that's the case. I do worry about that. My gut is that if we're having an issue with enforcement, I'm not sure we're going to get enforcement of people parking bike lanes in the very near future. Although I think we should still work on that. And I just appreciate people's comments about it because it's something that's come up a lot on the commission over the years. And I do think that there is a systemic or issue about staffing, that we should probably be pushing on harder to change. And I'm happy to help on that and work with anyone on that. But in the meantime,
I see it on Santa Cruz a lot too.
Oh gosh,
Just
yeah.
anecdotally.
Yeah,
I'm sure you do.
It's crazy. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mhm.
I do want to say that it has improved markedly from like a year ago, right?
That's
Like,
right.
I mean, it was rampant 8 months after we put in the no parking signs, and then 4 months after we put in more no parking signs. Like it was really, so I do want to say that whatever they've done, they have managed to really tamp down on, most of the parking in the bike lane. But
If
at
I
least
can
during my,
Yes.
share what I hear from the police
Sure.
department when we have these coordination meetings is their philosophical approach is to start with education. And so they really do want to reach out to the community, make sure that the person in violation understands what's going on. So they'll start with a warning and start with education before they'll issue a citation. And that's just kind of a department-wide approach, which is just really building that community trust. And, I think that's their goal is. And so it could be that they really were doing a lot of that warning in education, and maybe we're seeing the benefits.
I think I support educating the public on the needs to not park in the bike lane, but part of that, in addition to signs, might just be physical barriers that don't let you do it, and so you don't have the opportunity to make that mistake. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah. And this came up when we were talking about middle physical barriers. And I do believe there was some, I don't want to pretend to summarize all the feedback at all, but I do believe that some of it was about emergency vehicles and also getting to houses and also drop like Amazons and things like that. And there was definitely some people who spoke out at the time, but it doesn't mean that it isn't something that as a commission we should continue to push on. I do agree with Commissioner Seabreen that the bollards definitely have fallen off on Olive. So I think we should look at that because the same thing was happening at Menlo and University. And I know we reported back to Kevin on it and he got those bollards reinstalled. But I'm unsettled that we don't have a better solution to physical barriers and bike lanes. Obviously on Santa Cruz, it could be useful too, but it seems like we haven't cracked that one yet. But I would love to do that, because I can see how the bollards have really helped on some of these tricky turns and really controlled car behavior for the safety of bicyclists. So is there any other feedback? Do we want to just agree? Obviously, we're not making a motion, but do we want to agree as a group? Is there consensus to at least say that we'd like to strongly encourage the city to, you know, while we're doing this, to take a look at what, if there's a pilot or some low-cost measure we could try on College and Partridge, and, you know, with further study for maybe even installation of stop sign at College and Arbor. I'm happy to, I think it might be beneficial if we just decide, you know, get everyone to nod or not nod that that's something we'd like to at least recommend. And then, you know, I'm happy to work with anyone else on the commission to have a further conversation with the city around that. Or have someone else as well, if they want to lead that, or.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Okay, I'm just listening to the conversation and thinking, with the green lines in the cycle lane, is it ever protocol to put the bollards where those green stripes are, where there also happens to be a right turn, where the right turn vehicle could be bleeding into that lane, or perhaps when they're approaching a stop sign? So it would prohibit the accident of them bleeding into the bike lane and encourage the stopping at the stop sign. Is that ever protocol in a cycling lane?
I'm happy to answer that because I just looked into it myself. So the green lanes are there to mark that it is a conflict zone. And that is a place where vehicles and bicyclists could potentially mix. So in the California Vehicle Code, if you're a driver driving a vehicle and you need to make a right-hand turn, you're supposed to go to as far right as practicable, I think is the word, to make that turn. So that if there is a cyclist proceeding at the same direction, that you are looking to see if you can merge safely over into that lane and make the turn. Because if you don't enter that lane to make the turn, it's the crash word is a right hook. And that's where the vehicle will turn and the cyclist will be like, that's where the crash will happen if the vehicle turns without moving into the lane first and then turning. So kind of getting in line to use that space for either the turn or the through movement.
Because what I'm getting at is, instead of a broad brushstroke of let's add some physical barriers, maybe we can be more specific as to what sections they would be most likely to be added to this project. And we can start there, be a little more specific.
Yeah, and the purpose of the barriers would not be to solve that conflict. It would be to prevent people from parking in the bike lane. Correct. That's what the discussion is.
Oh, I thought the discussion was safety as well as parking.
Well, so I also see that this mistake goes both ways. As Commissioner Seabury mentioned, the kids biking don't necessarily respect the bike lanes, and for their own safety, keeping them to one side might be useful as well.
Keeping the children in the bike lane.
Yeah.
Okay. So it feels like there's sort of two tracks. One is you have to issue is it an RFP that's coming up? An RFP on Middle. And I don't want to be the only one of this opinion, or maybe I'm wrong, but it just, I'm getting the sense that that has to happen soon. And it would be challenging to sort of rewrite it to include other things. It would maybe require other approvals or something. So that being said, if the RFP stays as is with finishing up the Middle project, you know, as approved by the City Council on October 22, then we are coming up with, and residents are also suggesting some good and valid ideas around particular behavior on Middle, like could there be bollards in specific places to maybe reinforce kids staying within bike lanes, and also heads up, don't park here, and would that be a good thing to pilot or try? And then you've got this other issue of, we're hearing that there's, you know, bad traffic, increased traffic and fast traffic coming down the side streets, and how can we get a handle on that? So I think my suggestion would be that with regard to those things which weren't presented to the city council, et cetera, to engage the city council in that work and see if there's like support in maybe piloting some things. I'm not sure if it runs the exact timeframe of summer 2025, or if it's part of the quote, part of that project, but maybe it's benefited by being separate or something like that. But it sounds like there's two tracks. And I'm happy to reach out to the council member and just get some advice about how one pursues a track that's separate but related to an existing project. But I think I want to say we've heard the feedback. We understand the concerns. We really appreciate the public stepping up and letting us know about them. And we will work hard to find a way to address those things while we prioritize, finishing the story of Middle Avenue and making this high crash corridor as safe as it can be. And I do want to also express, Katrine, I very much appreciate your going back and seeing if the engineers would sign off on moving the beacon flashers over to the other side of the other arbor crosswalk. I just, again, it's just I just see human behavior there, and I don't think it's going to change. And I think that's the one that needs to have the beacons in terms of safety. Okay. Anyone else want to comment about, like, again, we're not making a motion, but sort of have I depicted the way we feel about this, or do other folks want to articulate something else that we as a commission can agree on? Everyone's good?
You did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
There was a lot.
Thank you, Jackie. Oh, that's you. All right. Okay, then. Well, one of the good things about discussions like this is just how much people care about the safety of our community, and we appreciate that because it takes some hard work, and we agree with you that it's really super important. So I appreciate everyone's time and also the public input very much. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is informational items. When city staff provides us an update on matters of importance to the commission, informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. Okay, so the first informational item tonight is update on major project status. Katrine, do you have any updates?
I do have one update. Last night, City Council approved for staff to apply for joint funding from CCAG and SMCTA. Those are the agencies that provide grants to cover up to 75% of the shuttle program costs over the next 2 annual budget cycles. So this is council approving staff to apply for a grant.
Okay.
To cover 75%. That would cover costs over the next 2 budget cycles. This is one of 2 grants that the city has historically used to fund the shuttle program. The other is an MTC Lifeline grant, and that's offset. The grant cycle is not at the same time and so that one will come up, and staff is expecting to apply for that funding later in 2026.
Okay. Good.
That concludes my updates on major project status.
Thank you. Katrine, can you call for public comments on that item?
Yes.
Is that right?
For virtual, yeah, I just had to find my notes. Yep, there we are. There's too many pieces of paper here. For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium and make your comment. I do not see anyone in the queue for public comment. I return the meeting to the chair.
So the next item is the tentative Complete Streets Commission agenda. I know, Katrine, you mentioned that in April we'll be meeting at Bellhaven and talking about the Willow Pet and Bike Improvement Project. Great. Thank you. Look, we have a visual.
Those are the upcoming, and yes, we expect the Willow Road to be the project, the item for discussion. We'll formalize that when we formalize the agenda, but that's the expectation right now.
It's going to be really interesting to hear about that Grand Boulevard initiative because they kept referring to it when they were talking about bike lanes on El Camino. Atherton kept referring to it. So I'm interested to know more about that. Great. Okay. Was this in the staff preso? It was. Thank you. Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm all
All
done.
right. Maybe this is the place to bring it up. It's something that Matt said earlier that I've often wondered about related to enforcement. One of the best things that I experienced was when we walked Santa Cruz Avenue with a couple of the officers. And I got to tell you, it was an hour and a half or 2 hours of very powerful dialogue and really helped me understand some of the challenges that they had. So to kind of build on what Matt has said, maybe we as a group have an informal meeting with the police directly, and maybe an informal agenda where every so often we get together with them and just say, hey, what's it look like to you? This is what it looks like to us, and kind of an open dialogue with them. Or we take a project and we walk the streets again with them or something like that. So there's more of a, kind of interaction with them directly. So because enforcement keeps coming up all the time. And, I feel I'd be better if I kind of could see it from their perspective as well. So I don't know if we get that on the agenda. I don't know if other people feel the same way or not.
I'll look into it to see what we can do, and we'll come back to you with an answer.
I think one thing might be interesting to research is which of the city council members is the liaison to the police. I don't know the answer to that. We know that Cecilia Taylor is the city council member liaison to our commission, and she might be interested in supporting that kind of conversation. So it might be good to reach out to them. I'll check in with you, Katrine, on those two questions. All right, then. All right. Did anyone
Sorry,
have?
can I ask the clarifying
Yes, go
question
right
about
ahead. Yeah.
the tentative Complete Streets Commission agenda? Is this in priority order? Like, can we expect roughly to kind of like month by month that this is like an approximate order? And would we ever tackle more than one of these things in a meeting?
I thought tonight was going to be a quick agenda item. So typically I've been instructed that it's one, just for time limitations. They're not in order. They're not prioritized. Sometimes I'm not exactly sure when we're going to be ready as staff to bring them to you. And sometimes these are outside agencies coming to us. So there's just a lot of variables at play. And again, the order of importance also isn't necessarily reflected in the order that we're able to bring you them. Just because we're not bringing it to them doesn't mean they're not important. We're just not ready to present.
I have one more question,
Yes.
sort of. I see here the Slow Street program.
Yes.
Which has, I think, been brought up
Mhm.
tonight. And recommendation would be the commission action. I guess, at what stage is that at right now? Is it like, would that be like kind of restarting a program from scratch, and our recommendation would be like, what does that program look like? Or would it be like a prioritization of which streets to be working on, or
It,
like what?
when it would come up on the agenda, it would come up as a description of the process of what the workflow would look like
Right.
for approaching the slow streets.
Like the intake and the prioritization of requests coming in.
Okay, thank you.
And then this,
Yes.
before we leave today, I just want to make sure that we, Chair Cole and I had touched base with Kevin on the April meeting, which is during MPCSD spring break, which I think
Oh.
affects possibly 3 of us in this room. I
Right.
just wanted to mention that because
That's
that is the
correct.
Bellhaven meeting.
Oh, that's
And-
correct. You're right. We had. Okay, so that would be, April 8, 12, 11, 12, 9th? That meeting's on the 9th. So I guess the question is, could we move it to the 16th, Wednesday, the 16th? Or I guess alternatively the 2nd? Would you mind checking with the city clerk, Katrina, if we could move the meeting to the 16th?
Yes, I'm just seeing it on my calendar now. So the request is to move the meeting from the 9th to the 16th. I will check with the city clerk and get back to you.
Thank you.
Or the 2nd.
Right, just not spring break. Yeah.
You won't be here on the 2nd. Okay. We have 2 people already not going to be here on the 2nd. So, wait, you're not going to be here the 16th. Sorry, 1 16th and 1 2nd. I guess.
Oh,
Oh, there's 2 people can't do the 16th. We might lose you on the 2nd. Oh, that's right, but it's Willow. Athena's like our Willow person. So what you're saying is that whole week of the 7th is out. Right. And you are out that whole week, that second week? I mean, the 16th, which is the day you came. Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah.
The second. Nobody can do it.
She can't do that, no. No. So we're requesting the 16th because.
the 16th, okay.
Because 2 people can't do the 16th. Sorry. I guess if you have any comments and stuff, you can tell me.
We have to check with Bellhaven as well to have the space, make
That's
sure the
correct,
space is
yeah.
there. So
Okay, all righty. All right, let's move on. So, oh, can you call for public comments on the tentative Complete Streets Commission agenda?
for virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. I have no one in the queue for public comment. I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Do we have any subcommittee reports? Okay. If not, we are going to adjourn this meeting at 8:25 PM. Thanks everyone for their time and service.